Okay, good evening. I would like to call the meeting of the Prince William County School Board to order. This meeting of the Prince William County School Board is being conducted electronically under the Virginia Code 223708.2 and the authority granted by the General Assembly on April 22, 2020, through Amendment 28 to House Bill 29, which permits the school board to meet electronically during the pendency of the current state of emergency for the purpose of transacting such business as is statutorily required or necessary to continued operations of the Prince William County Public Schools and the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. A motion is in order for the approval of the closed session agenda. Ms. Zargarpur.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the closed session agenda as recommended.
Do we have a second? Ms.
I second.
Wall. Ms. Wall seconds. Any discussion? Okay, please vote. Online or here? You have to talk to Jason.
Yeah.
Jason, do you have Ms. Ralston? Oh,
I
there
do,
you go.
sir.
Okay, Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Ralston votes yes.
The vote is 6 yes, 2 absent, Williams and Jesse. Motion passed.
Moving on to the motion to enter closed session. A motion's in order. Ms. Zargarpur.
Mr. Chairman, I move that pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711 and 2.2-3712, that the Prince William County School Board enter closed session for the following reasons. 1, to discuss with Division Counsel and staff the performance, appointment, transfer, release, assignment, and promotion of specific officers, employees, and appointees under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A, 1 and 8. 2, to discuss and consult with legal counsel regarding requests for religious exemptions pertaining to specific students under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A, 2 and 8. And 3, to receive information and discuss with Division Counsel, the staff, actual or probable litigation and specific legal matters involving specific staff and students under Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A, 7 and 8, and to dispense with the attendance of the superintendent and staff as necessary as provided by Virginia Code Section 22.1-69.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Ms. Wall seconds. Any discussion? Okay, please vote. I see on my script here, B, you say all, I can say all in favor. Are we going to do that? No. I see. Okay, all right, that's fine. No, that's okay. I'd rather do that. But, that's okay. All right, what's the vote? Oh, Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Ralston votes yes. That's fine. I was just joking, by the way. Okay, we need to add something? Oh. Did you leave out something?
Oh, I was reading the script, so,
Yeah,
Well, Sammy.
okay. The computer, you got to read it from the computer. Okay, strike that vote, and we're going to redo this. A new motion is in order for the approval of closed session agenda. Ms. Zargarpur.
Dr. Lateef, I move that pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711 and 2.2-3712, the Prince William County School Board enter closed session for the following reasons. 1, to discuss with Division Counsel and staff the contracts, performance evaluation, appointment, transfer, release, and assignment, and promotion of specific officers, employees, and appointees under Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A, 1 and 8, and to dispense with the attendance of the superintendent and staff as necessary as provided by Virginia Code Section 22.1-69. 2, to receive information and discuss with Division Counsel and staff actual or probable litigation and specific legal matters involving specific staff and students under Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A, 1, 2, 7, and 8. 3, to receive legal advice from Division Counsel and information from staff regarding legal issues regarding impending legislative changes to affecting school operations under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A, 8. 4, to receive information from staff and advice from legal counsel regarding a deed restriction relating to the continued environmental remediation of a portion of the Independent Hill site under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A, 8. And 5, to receive advice and information from legal counsel and staff regarding the acquisition of real property for school sites where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the school board, and to discuss the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, if made public initially, the financial interest of the school board would be adversely affected under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A, 3, 6, 7, and 8.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Ms. Wall seconds the motion. Any discussion? Okay, please vote. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Ralston votes yes.
So the vote is 6 yes, 2 absent, Williams and Jesse, motion passed.
At this time, the Prince William County School Board will enter closed session and return in approximately 1 hour. Thank you. The Prince William County School Board is now returning to open session from closed session. Moving on to the closed session certification of motions in order. Ms. Zargarpur.
Mr. Chairman, I move that pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3712, the closed session of the Prince William County School Board meeting on May 5th, 2021 be certified by adopting the following resolution. Now therefore be it resolved that the Prince William County School Board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard and discussed or considered by the school board.
Have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Williams.
second.
Any discussion? Please vote. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Ralston votes yes.
So the vote is 8 yes, motion passed.
Okay. Moving on next to the action items. We have a number of them. Closed session, approval of appointments and releases. Ms. Zargarpur.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the appointments and releases of specific employees as presented in closed session.
Do we have a second? Ms. Wall.
I second.
Ms. Wall seconds. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, please vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Ms. Ralston votes yes.
The vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
Next, 802, Ms. Zargarpur.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve and authorize the chairman at large to execute an agreement on behalf of the school board waiving the superintendent's 2021-2022 annual evaluation in recognition of Dr. Waltz's June 30th, 2021 resignation.
Do you have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Williams.
I second.
Any discussion? Please vote. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Ralston votes yes.
Vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
Moving on to the last item, Ms. Zargarpur.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the proposed deed restriction necessary to continue the environmental remediation efforts for a portion of the Independent Hill site and authorize the chairman at large to execute the same on behalf of the school board.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Ralston seconds. Any discussion? Okay, please vote. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Ralston votes yes.
The vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
Okay, next, I would like to call the meeting of the Prince William County School Board to order. This meeting of the Prince William County School Board is being conducted electronically under the Virginia Code 2237082 and the authority granted by General Assembly on April 22nd, 2020 through Amendment 28 to House Bill 29, which permits the school board to meet electronically during the pendency of the current state of emergency for the purpose of transacting such business as is statutorily required or necessary to continue the operations of the Prince William County Public Schools and the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. So we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Student tonight? Ms. Williams, you can lead us. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. Motion's in order, Ms. Zargarpur.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the public meeting agenda as recommended.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Williams?
Second?
Any discussion? Please vote. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Ralston votes yes.
The vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
Next, we'll move on to the adoption of the consent agenda. Motion's in order.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the public meeting consent agenda as recommended.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I
Ms.
second.
Ms. Williams seconds. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Jessie?
I'd like to just have a question on 1206. Just a discussion on that.
And what would you like to
Mr.
ask? Ms.
Walliford.
What's your question, Ms. Jessie?
I think we received something in our confidential emails that we will be getting something soon on how this money is going to be disseminated. And I think my question is, will the board have an active role?
Dr. Waltz?
So yes, we are still awaiting the state to finalize the application process, and then once that's done, we will communicate back with you that that has been completed. And then, as I have mentioned in some of the previous meetings, we will certainly bring forth some recommendations if we think that there's an urgency around spending some of that money now. You may recall that I also stated that this has a 2-year window to spend, and we want to make sure that we're providing funding for the new superintendent and the board to work with her as well, because we don't really know what's around the corner. But yes, we would see the board's involvement, yes.
And I think you've heard me talk about hazard pay for teachers, and I'm not sure this is an item that you guys should discuss that, but we are still considering that, are we?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Please vote. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
The vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
Okay, moving on to the citizen comment time. Due to the COVID-19 state of emergency and legal restrictions on the school board's authority to conduct its meetings through electronic means, unlike other public bodies meeting electronically under more expansive legal authority, all discussions in this meeting by board members, staff, citizens must be limited to agenda items. Citizens may speak on the agenda item for 2 minutes. When the board is able to resume regular meetings without virtual participation permitted during the state of emergency, expanded citizen comment time will be resumed as provided by Policy 134. In the interim, citizen comment time has been reinstated on a limited basis in order to allow public comment, both in person and through electronic means during the state of emergency. Citizens are encouraged to submit their comments by email to the clerk, who will share them with the school board. These citizens who have signed up in advance with the school board no later than 4 p.m. Wednesday, May 5th, 2021, may address the school board in person or virtually electronically about matters relating to our agenda for May 5th tonight. I have one speaker, I think, in person. I don't think we have anybody online, right? So one speaker in person. Maggie Hansford.
Hi, thank you, Chair Lateef. My name is Maggie Hansford, and my address is on file. Happy Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week. I'm here to speak on the proposed plan for next year. As we're looking at the plan, we just hope that you're including educators in the process and having us being a part of those decision-making efforts when we look to educating our students next year. We thank the superintendent for building a plan, and we look forward to the school board's thoughts on it and you all including us in that process. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the what are we doing here? 1401, Safe Schools Advisory Council Annual Report. Dr. Waltz.
Ms. Hart, please. Dr. Hart. Dr. Jocelyn Hart, recently minted doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Good evening. This week is Teacher Appreciation Week, but I'm certain you will agree that this year is Teacher Appreciation Year. Hats off to our all hands on deck, whatever it takes teachers. Good evening, Chairman Lateef, members of the school board, and Dr. Waltz. Specifically, Dr. Waltz, thank you for your vision to initiate a Safe Schools Advisory Council. Also, I would like to recognize the participation and support of Mr. Justin Wilk of the Potomac District and Mrs. Jennifer Wall of the Gainesville District. Both serve on the Safe Schools Advisory Council. I am honored and proud to serve as the facilitator for the Safe Schools Advisory Council. Absolutely, we are excited about the important work of school safety. This year's virtual Community Information Night was on the topic of social media. Let's welcome our dedicated and knowledgeable chairman, Mr. Ron Crow, to the podium so he can share the Safe Schools Advisory Council's efforts and accomplishments for school year 2020-21. Mr. Crow, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Next slide, please. So you can see the purpose of the Safe Schools Advisory Council. It was created 15 years ago by Dr. Waltz in his first year or two with the school division. Since that time, we've been working to support the safety and security of students and staff at schools. Our initial efforts were working through physical security issues and hardware with the schools, with a later focus on mental health issues in support of Dr. Waltz's initiative over the last number of years. Next slide. You can see our advisory council is made up of many different members. We have school board members, we have appointees by the school board, as well as superintendent staff, and also some of our own county friends from the police and fire department and community services. Next slide, please. So areas of focus in the past several years, again, have been on mental health, and for students, those include bullying prevention, mental health awareness, and suicide prevention presentations, resiliency, PSAs, and also social media information nights, which we have done most recently. Next slide. So on February 4th, that culminated with Safe Schools Advisory Council Parent Information Night, a Zoom meeting which was hosted by Billy Watts, who's the ITC at Colgan High School. He did a really nice job at going over social media options, usage, cautions to parents, and some recommendations on usage. Billy's done this presentations to thousands of students and employees across the school division and in Northern Virginia. So it went on for about an hour and a half. With panelists asking or answering questions from the 150 attendees at the end of the night. So at the end, the presentation is going to be posted tomorrow on the school board website if anyone wants to watch that, or on the school division website if anyone wants to watch the entire presentation. However, tonight we have about a 2-minute wrap-up that Billy did at the end of the presentation that covered some of the topics he talked about that night. So if we can have that link.
One of the resources I really want you to think about that's available is National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And this is most recently from their website, just in 2019. You can see that crazy number of images, videos, and files related to child exploitation. And so all of this tonight is to get us to talk about what are those red flag behaviors that we really need to be having conversations with our kids about. What standards are we going to put in place for our kids to have friends, fans, followers, and stalkers? How are we going to help them have a healthy balance in their online life? What settings can we put in place as parents to give them guidance? And then how can we meet our kids where they are so that we can keep this conversation going? Just no matter what happens, they need us. They need us as teachers. They need us as coaches. They need us as parents, as older brothers and siblings. And I tell this all the time to I give a talk to all ninth graders, and I give a talk to all 10th graders because that's required in the health PE curriculum. And I come back around for our 11th and 12th graders, and I give a talk about leadership. And I give a talk about how you need to be the leaders that are standing up for the kids that are in your lives, the younger versions of you. And so right down here we have the cyber tip line. When everything goes terrible and crisis happens, yes, we come right here and we report it. But a lot of the things that are reported on the tip line to National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and for the suicide hotline, and all those things aren't reported necessarily from the user themselves. They're reported from a friend who's speaking out on behalf. And so it's really encouraging not just our kids and our students to be safe, but understanding what is just not okay. And then when we see it, we say something and we report it.
Okay, thank you. So next slide. So our next step is the Safe Schools Advisory Council has expressed an interest in continuing this social media safety into next year, and we can make those decisions and start with that with the committee makeup for next year. But that's going to be where we're going to start, and hopefully we'll get approved for moving ahead next year. And that concludes my presentation tonight. Again, thanks to the school board for all of your support and safety and security for our schools. If you have any questions or comments, I can take those.
Are there any questions? Mr. Will.
I just want to thank Dr. Hart, Mr. Crow, and the entire group on the Safe Schools Advisory, including my member and all of our board member representatives for the service in the year. It was not an easy year with COVID-19. I missed the gathering of dinners and talking and being able to converse with one another, but I think under your facilitation, Dr. Hart, and your leadership, Mr. Crow, I think it was a very good and successful year. So thank you so much for your involvement, engagement, and everyone who served this year on the Safe Schools Advisory Council.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Wall, did you have? Okay. Anybody else? Ms. Ralston? Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. All right.
Ms. Zagapur?
So moving.
Ms. Zagapur?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Waltz.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to, again, thank Dr. Hart, Mr. Crow, and all the committee members, including our school board members. And I also want to make sure I'm giving credit where credit is due. When we put this into action back in the 2005-2006 school year, I also want to give credit to the school board at the time. They unanimously supported creating this as well. And there was actually a lot of community interest in this. And so it was a great effort with a tremendous amount of support. And you can tell that something is important when it's still operational 16 years later. So again, thank you to the committee and the leadership.
Ms. Jessie?
Hi, I just wanted to know if, I know the committee is thinking about students who've been home during the COVID crisis and suicide prevention. I received a note from a parent today, and she indicated that there's been about 4 suicides. I'm not sure the number, but are we looking at, I know your committee will be looking at an approach to look at those kids who've been at home for long periods of time, and not only just the isolation, but seeing certain situations in their homes. And or have you thought about that as a committee? I'm sure you have, but I just want to have your comments on that.
Yeah, in the past year or two, we have done information nights and gotten information out of the community on suicide awareness and what we have available to students. So we've done that recently. Usually each year we choose a focus to move forward with, and we can certainly consider that when the committee reconvenes in the fall.
Ms. Wall?
I wanted to thank Dr. Hart and Mr. Crow and all of the others who have served on the committee. I echo Mr. Wilkes' comments about the gratitude for the time and effort that's spent serving on this committee. It is a very important work. We started we've kind of gotten into this. We started getting into the social media topic. I know we're going to continue conversations on that because, as has been pointed out, kids are home, and yet the world is still in their hands, in their palms, and so the risks that children face are different. Yet we can continue this conversation. So I appreciate the good work of the committee and the important work that they're doing. And I just wanted to say thank you for the time, commitment, and Mr. Watts for his presentation. I would encourage the public watching to go find that video and take a look at it. It was very informative. It was an introductory talk on the topic. Obviously, if you really want to know, a lot more, you feel that students in danger, I would reach out to authorities. NCMEC has a lot of resources. Internet Crimes Against Children has a lot of resources as well, but this production was a good introductory video. I really encourage everybody to take a look if you can.
All right, thank you. Moving on, we have a proposed equity statement that will be presented to the board. Dr. Waltz?
Yes, thank you very much, and we will lead off with Deputy Iman.
Good evening, Vice Chairwoman Zargarpur and Chairman Lateef when he returns, members of the school board, Dr. Waltz. I'm pleased to bring to the school board a presentation tonight by members of the Superintendent's Advisory Council on Equity for your consideration of the Council's unanimously recommended Prince William County Public Schools Equity Statement. While it is on the agenda tonight for your information, it will also be on May 19 agenda for the school board to consider for approval. First, I thank the members of the Advisory Council who are either here in person tonight or joining us virtually. I'm certain that you will see their passion for the work they are doing on the Advisory Council and for the statement they are presenting tonight, as every word was carefully chosen to convey the consensus of the members. It is now my pleasure to turn the presentation over to Mrs. Carolyn Custard, who serves as the Council's facilitator. She will introduce you to the members of the Advisory Council presenting tonight as representatives of the entire Council. And as a reminder, the members of the Superintendent's Advisory Council on Equity were selected by each of you to represent you, and their appointments approved by the board as a whole, in addition to the members appointed by the superintendent. And with that, Mrs. Custard, the floor is yours. Thank you, Carolyn.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Iman. Good evening, Chairman Lateef, Vice Chairman Zargarpur, members of the school board, and Dr. Waltz. It is my pleasure to serve as the facilitator of this year's Superintendent Advisory Council on Equity. We are excited and very proud to share with you this evening our Prince William County Schools Equity Statement. Next slide, please. This slide shows the members of the Superintendent's Advisory Council on Equity. These amazing, committed, and dedicated persons have worked very hard this year to guide our work as a school division on equity for all. Representing SAYS this evening for this presentation are three members who also served on the Equity Statement Subcommittee, and they are Dr. Kate Olson-Flan, Ms. India Daniels, and Ms. Gloria Jordan. And at this time, I turn the presentation over to Ms. India Daniels.
Good evening, Chairman Lateef, Vice Chair Zargarpur, members of the school board, and Dr. Waltz. My name is India Daniels, and I represent the Woodbridge District. Thank you for having me. First, as part of the key milestones of development, and as part of this process to develop equity, the council reviewed the equity scorecard data, conducted comprehensive review of existing equity statements and policies, gathered group input, and a draft statement was presented to the entire council, revisited priorities after the onset of the pandemic, completed training on adverse childhood experiences and cultural competency, gathered feedback on the draft and generated a final statement, approved the statement at the March 26 meeting, and the statement was then approved by the superintendent's staff on April 14th and is now being presented to the school board for approval. Just a few words. Just let me say this. This moment is historic. We have come a long way in this county. We are truly a diverse community, and I'm proud to be a part of that diversity. It is not often that folks from all walks of life come together and create a policy that is inclusive of everyone. This is the work our ancestors will be proud of. Now, I'll admit it was yeoman's work, and it's still ongoing. I thank Denise and her staff for moving us along and keeping us focused. But I'm truly pleased and thankful that we have reached this point in history. We did this work in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, protests, and national frustration. We did it knowing that it'll make a difference going forward. And with that being said, I'd like to hand this over to Councilmember Gloria Jordan, who will present the first ever equity statement for Prince William County Public Schools. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Chairman Lateef, Vice Chairman Zargapur, members of the school board, and Dr. Waltz for having me. My name is Gloria Jordan. I reside in Coles District and was appointed by Vice Chairman Zargapur. It is an honor to be here as a representative for our distinguished Equity Council. I have 4 kids within Prince William County Schools, ranging from elementary school through high school. I have also had the great privilege of being a school nurse under Teresa Polk and Gina Bellamy's leadership in a school that is predominantly children of color from a variety of social, economic, and cultural backgrounds. As a nurse and as a parent, I have personally seen the great value in providing equitable care to the community of Prince William County Schools. Before I go on, I do want to make sure you understand that when we say equity, that is a very broad umbrella. Under equity, we are being inclusive of race, gender identity, expression, sexual preference, ethnicity, language, learning and physical disabilities, religion, culture, immigration status, medical conditions, economic status, and gifted learners. Equity is inclusive of all members of Prince William County Schools. Next slide, please. Here is our equity statement. Prince William County Schools are committed to inclusive practices and equity to promote excellence for all. As a school community, our commitment to equity will be achieved by providing all students and staff with access to resources, opportunities, supports, and interventions to ensure that they maximize their abilities and potential. Giving students and staff what they need, not necessarily equally, to meet their learning, health, and safety requirements. Next slide, please. Raising the achievement of all students while working to eliminate learning disparities. Assuring that all PWCS staff members, with deliberate effort, continue to examine and eliminate institutional beliefs, implicit and explicit biases, policies and/or practices that perpetuate systemic racism and discrimination, and engaging parents, guardians, and the community in division and school programs to build connections, provide support, and foster relationships with the goal of making our institutional, curricular, and instructional practices more transparent and inclusive, relevant, meaningful, and supportive in the academic and social development of all learners. Next slide, please. Training, examining, and revising our curricular and teaching practices to ensure that they are culturally relevant and representative of the achievements of our diverse community to meet the social and academic needs and expectations of each student. Recruiting and retaining staff members who reflect the rich diversity of our community and who work to achieve equity and excellence for all students. And preparing all students to succeed in a multicultural, global society by teaching the contributions and viewpoints of all people in culturally relevant curricula. This is Prince William County Schools' equity statement. And now I present to you Dr. Kate Olson-Flynn to discuss the overarching goals of this all-inclusive equity statement. Thank you.
It's hard to get that next slide. Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Good evening, Chairman Lateef, Vice Chair Zargapur, school board members, and Dr. Waltz, and our wonderful Prince William County community. My name is Dr. Kate Olson Flynn. You've seen me here many times at the podium, and I am the Chairman at Large representative on the council. It is exciting to be able to stand here with my insightful and knowledgeable colleagues to present the goal of our council's important work. As you are able to see in this presentation, this document is a comprehensive list of bullet statements that are actionable. We purposefully designed the statement in this way to meet two overarching goals. One, to make a comprehensive declaration of the intention of our school division's work toward the goal of equity, inclusion, and excellence in all areas of education. And two, to create a vision statement that can both frame and guide the work in all areas of our school division and in our board, such as funding allocation, achievement, recruitment, training, parent engagement, communication, professional development, and of course, pedagogy. It is our hope as a council that designing this equity statement in this way, we will enable our division to make measurable strides towards equity, inclusion, and of course, excellence for all. We would like to thank each of you for your support in our important work. Thank Dr. Waltz and Mr. Iman, and of course, Ms. Huebner. And we look forward to meeting many more milestones in the future for all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, board members? Thoughts? Ms. Jessie.
I'm very impressed. It's a very comprehensive list, and you talked about actionable items. What's the next step? How do you guys make this an actionable working document?
I'm happy to have others join in this answer, but to give you a brief thing, obviously the next step would be making it official as a statement voted on by the board. And we've already been in the process, as you all know, of doing equity across our school division for years. This puts it out in a formalized statement. We have had all kinds of actionable things that we have been working on as a school division in regards to equity. But this puts it in the forefront so that as we go forward, beginning with the development of our new strategic plan, which is also on the agenda before the end of this school year for the board to consider, and it is embedded into the things that we are doing. I don't know if we have others who would like to address? Okay.
Would you repeat the question, please? How is it actionable?
Actionable, for example, the scorecard. I've seen the scorecard, and I've seen references to the scorecard. But the question is, what practices will be changing based on that scorecard? So I don't want a detailed item discussion like SMART goals and things of this nature. I just want to know the next steps because it's a very comprehensive plan and it's very involved, as you can see. And thank you for serving.
Well, thank you for having me. The goal of the committee, we looked at many equity statements during our year of working together to form this statement. And what we saw was many statements that had a general overview of equity, but we wanted to make sure that there was a statement that each division in our schools could take with them, and they could look at them, and they could create documents, they could create policies or procedures at the school level and at the administrative level that could affect change in the school division. So that's why they're actionable research, the bullet statements, so that for hiring practices, you could develop a hiring procedures around the statement that talks about hiring. For achievement, that you could develop statements to see how we're meeting that that goal of achievement, so that it was laid out in a specific way so that we could meet those goals.
Now, for example, the scorecard, but when you look at the disparities in hiring practices, that's a big goal, and I just want to know how you guys are going to do this. I'm sure Dr. McDade is going to be an integral part of this, but I just want to
Yes.
know when you will get back with the board with some actionable plans for these bullets.
Well, the first step was creating the statement, and if it is approved by you, then we could probably move forward into how we can use it to meet the needs of the scorecard.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. That was actually what I was going to say. The first step is first presenting to you all, and then to have approval to use it. Ms. Hebner, if you'd like to also share some information.
I want to ask a question.
One sec, Ms. Hebner will go, and then I'll have you next, Ms. Ralston.
Thank you.
I promise I'll be brief. So one of the things that you're asking is what are our next steps? And so as you're all aware, you've been presented the different initiatives from the state of Virginia. And one of the things that we're very excited about as a council is the Navigating the Roadmap to Equity. And as part of that, the work from Virginia Department of Education, there is an equity audit. So what we envision is working with our council and our incoming superintendent to conduct that audit. And then from the information that we glean from that audit is making our next steps and actionable items that would guide our work. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ralston, question?
Yes, please. Thank you. I'd like to know, how do you get your information out? And I understand we have a committee, but what about the parents that either not real good in speaking English or any other language? So when do we get that out for them? Also, even our own parents who are around constantly, they're not quite sure either. So how do you kind of get down in the weeds, as they would say, in order to bring up the information that they first got to understand what does this committee do? And what does equity mean? So, I mean, very clearly, and I also want to say thank you to those who have already spoken, because it was really the right thing for us to do. But we got to be able to do it in a manner that our parents, our friends, or anybody else's, we have to make sure that we are correct in what we say. Thank you very much, and thanks very much for your panel.
Mr. Iman.
Hello again.
No, he's going to talk.
Ms. Ralston and members of the board, once again, that this becomes an official statement of the school division. As you all know, when we communicate with our community, we have a number of communication vehicles. We translate into multiple languages. We provide information in that format. And once we embed this throughout the school division, the statement, you'll see it come back to life in the work that's presented out as we normally do with our community. But I agree with you, it's very important, and it's important to do it in a way that people understand.
Thank you. Ms. Williams?
I just first want to start by saying thank you to this council for all of the hard work that was put in during a pandemic. I think we've reached a point in society where we're glossing over pandemic, like it's just, it was a thing. But this is really challenging. And I think with the number of people serving on this committee, for everyone to come to one accord to produce this document is simply amazing, because there are so many individuals with different and diverse backgrounds, which is an asset to this type of a committee, but I've served on so many that I know sometimes that can also be a hindrance when it comes to drafting a singular document. I'm just almost speechless, because I never thought I would sit and see the day where Prince William County Schools would have such a powerful statement, such a concise statement, things that speak to specifics, and that can be turned into actionable items, policies later on, ways that we can implement a better school division for all right here in front of us. I think Ms. Daniels said it best when she said this is a very historic moment. Most divisions, organizations, companies, you get 2 lines at best that should left up to your interpretation to really decipher. I think that's sort of what Ms. Ralston was saying, like, what does it mean? And even when we talk about our strategic plan, I know you've heard me say, okay, what does the lens of equity really mean? And with this statement, I think it's, there's still a lot of room to ask the question of what it means, so there's still more work to be done. But I think it's very appropriate when you said this is a framework. I personally am very proud and thankful for all of your time and dedication and work on this. I think this is once again an opportunity that Prince William County Schools has taken to lead the way on defining equity, what that looks like for not only our students, but our staff, all of our employees, which I think a lot of times gets left out. We singularly focus on the students, and that is tremendously important. But often it's the staff that get left out of the conversation, and they're so integral because they're the ones responsible for our students. And if they're not included in this statement, if we aren't providing them the tools and resources and the proper training, then it almost doesn't matter what we say for the students. And that has been historically part of the problem. And so I am very thankful at this. I am very pleased with what the council has come up with. I hope that this board can come to an agreement and vote on this with an 8-0 vote. That would be very exciting to me. And that we're able to put this on all of our documents. This would be included in our strategic plan. It would be right up there when you flip open a document that says Prince William County Schools. This would be the first or second thing you see up there, so everybody is well aware of our intentions. So again, thank you to everyone on this council. Thank you, Dr. Waltz, for agreeing to take the lead and set this up. I think this once again demonstrates not only for our staff and students, but to the rest of the county, our serious commitment to equity. And I'm just very overwhelmed. Thank you very much for all of your work, and it'd be an honor for me to vote on this next week, or next meeting.
Ms. Wall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions, actually. My first question is if you could give us an update on Division Council's opportunity to look over the statement, maybe I know we had a little bit of a conversation, but for the benefit of everybody listening, maybe give an update on where we are with that.
Yes, Ms. Wall, as you know, we spoke this afternoon, and I've had a brief conversation with Division Council, but before the statement comes back to the board for approval, I'll be working with Division Council on that review. So for this evening, this is where we are tonight for information, and we'll have that done prior to coming back on May 19.
Thank you for that update. I think it's always important when we craft a statement that is very broad and is meant to govern everything that we do, that we always have legal eyes look at it, and also knowing that the topic is sensitive in nature to the larger community. It's very familiar to us as educators, but to the larger community, there is some need for nuance and understanding, and so I think that's a good idea. My second question is, well, we all knew that this was, the committee was formed and it was under development, that the statement was under development. The first time that I saw, or any of us saw this language, was when it was released to the public on board docs. And so I know I would have appreciated the chance to have seen the specific actual language ahead of time, ahead of the public seeing the language, because it's always a good idea to just not get kind of hit by it with the public commenting or emailing or wondering what's going on. But my question then became if Dr. McDade has had an opportunity to review this or weigh in on this. I know she's coming on board, but she's not here yet. We're in this kind of in-between stage, but I do feel that it would be important to gain her insight on this statement. This is, I know, an area that she's done a lot of work on and has lived it and breathed it. So do you know if Dr. McDade has had an opportunity to review this statement or the work of this committee in any way or weigh in on this in any way?
Well, what I can tell you is I shared the statement with Dr. McDade. We have not had the opportunity to discuss it to this point in time. However, I'll be meeting with Dr. McDade next week, and so I'll have a further opportunity to do that. But she has the statement.
All right, thank you, and thank you to everybody who served on the committee.
Thank you.
Ms. Jackson?
I just want to say thank you again for the amount of work that went into this statement. It sounds like it was vetted in great degree, and I'm just very grateful for the time. I know that the advisory committee is made up of volunteers, so I'm just very thankful. It's for the time that went into this. Also, thank you to Ms. Daniels, Dr. Olson-Flynn, and Ms. Jordan for your presentation today, and for your general dedication and volunteering for this. I just want to make sure I understand what the next step is so that I didn't misunderstand anything. The next step is to after we approve it, is to make sure that the strategic plan and the equity statement have a symbiotic relationship. That's the next step.
The answer is yes, but also to be aware, equity has been a big focus of the new strategic plan even prior to the development of the statement, but yes.
Okay. All right, thank you for everybody for taking the time to make sure that, for drafting this statement, to make sure that all students can have access to world-class education. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other hands up, I will just make some comments. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Daniels, Ms. Jordan, Dr. Kate Olson-Flynn for all your work you guys have done over the course of the year. I've been getting regular updates from Dr. Flynn, and I appreciate it. You know, I have to say thank you to Denise Hebner and her entire student services staff. I mean, you have sort of carried the school system, you know, in the sense that students went back with special ed in the fall, vaccinated teachers, now we're vaccinating students, and in all this time you found the time to, you know, your staff and your team to work on this equity statement, which is a very, very good document, very strong document, and I think the board here all appreciates the work here, and I can't thank you enough, Ms. Hebner, for all the work you guys have done, and your staff, student services, Office of Student Services. I see your tweets. You guys do terrific work, fantastic, and keep up all the great work. And we are lucky to have all of you. And Ms. Custard, they are out in the virtual world. If you see me, yes, thank you, as well, and the whole team. So wonderful. I think the board will look at this over the next couple weeks. You know, we'll come back here and I think. Hopefully pass this. I think it's a very strong statement. I think this embodies, I think as Ms. Daniels put out there in a sense, historic, it does embody, I think, who we are here in Prince William County. I think the document, from every line of it, and everything you said, if you were to talk to anybody on the street here, they're going to say, you know, this sounds like who we are. This is what we want. This is our aspiration. And I think this fits with who we as Prince William County folks are, and I think you guys really nailed it. So I want to thank you for your great work, and thank you all, and Mr. Iman, again, thank you. This is just outstanding work. So I think with that, we will move on to the next item. Thank you all very much this evening for coming, and coming in person. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, next we'll move on to student representative, Caroline Silvera, our Hilton High School student rep. This evening will be participating via virtual. Ms. Silvera.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to say thank you to the last presenters. I'm a student member of this council, and I'm very proud of all the work they've done. And they definitely have a passion for equity. Every single member does. So it's been great working with them this year. All right, so I'd like to take this opportunity to say Happy Teacher Appreciation Week. I am so lucky to have some of the best teachers in Prince William County who have shaped and made my high school experience. Thank you to all the teachers across the county and country who have made differences in their students' lives. We appreciate you so much. As the school year comes to an end, I would also like to take a moment to thank everyone who has listened to Student Voice this school year. From a senior perspective, a majority of us are so happy that we're able to hold graduation ceremonies in person this year, and that our family members will also be able to share this moment with us, either in person or virtually. Many students have also been grateful for the flexibility of final exams and AP examinations this year, which has relieved a lot of our stress. Overall, such as these show that listening to student voice is valuable and can have a large impact on our well-being and experiences as students. Secondly, I want to give a few Student Senate updates. 2 weeks ago, we held the last meeting of our Cultural Clubs Coalition. We had cultural club panelists from many different colleges in the area, including Howard University, University of Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Old Dominion University. Our panelists are so insightful and gave students great advice. Also, through the Cultural Clubs Coalition, I have been able to meet and work with the PWCS Black Student Union Coalition. They are in their first year of membership and have members from Hilton and Battlefield high schools. They created a presentation with recommendations and issues that are important to their members, and it will be live streamed sometime this year. They understand that the pandemic prohibits them from presenting at a school board meeting this year, but would love to work with the school board members in the future to present at a meeting. Finally, I understand that we are undergoing the process of finding student representatives and senators for next year, so good luck to every applicant. To end my time, I'd like to announce my post-high school plans. I'm happy to say I'll be attending the University of Virginia as an Eccles Scholar to major in political science. This will be a new journey for me, but I'm so excited to continue my education. Congratulations to all the seniors who have made their decisions for their futures. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you and congratulations, Caroline. We are so thrilled for you and very excited and very proud to have worked with you this year. And thank you for all your work this evening as well. Next, we'll move on to Dr. Waltz, Superintendent time. Dr. Waltz.
Thank you. Congratulations again, Carolyn. We appreciate your contributions and all your fine work. Thank you so much. Good evening, Chairman Lateef, members of the board. Even during a pandemic, our school division continues to earn accolades. I would like to congratulate our school board and the amazing staff in the Office of Energy and Sustainability for the school division's U.S. Department of Education Green Ribbon District Sustainability Award. This is a big deal, folks. Prince William County is one of only 5 school districts in the entire nation to earn this award, which is based on high achievement in reduced environmental impact and costs, improved health and wellness, and effective environmental and sustainability education. The U.S. Department of Education will formally present the award at a ceremony later this year. As you know, during the pandemic, PWCS remains committed to offering hands-on learning so critical to students pursuing careers in career and technical education. Students at Brentsville District High School recently showed off the school's amazing new greenhouse. Check out this video.
The best thing I can say about the greenhouse is that it's a game changer.
It's a phenomenal facility. It's an A-frame structure with glass glazing. We have automated shade screens, automated fans, temperature control, weather station. It is a great place for these kids to learn the updated technology and, not only learn how to, grow plants in a greenhouse, but also feed their families and feed their communities.
The program's a great way for a lot of young people to get introduced into the industry and find a passion for it. It really goes over different aspects, whether it's groundskeeping on turf fields or if it's landscaping, and you could go into different fields within the industry.
The program has taught me to always try new things. I never would have imagined myself being here in this school doing this program, but I think it opened a new opportunity for me to try out, and I've loved it ever since.
Back when we started this in 2016, we wanted to develop a program around the different jobs in the Northern Virginia area, turf management with all the golf courses in the area, landscape management with all the different companies, and then horticulture, because with all these landscape companies, there's so many components that go into the landscape industry that horticulturalists provide at greenhouses, at nurseries, different places like that. So we wanted to develop a program that really focused and honed in on those jobs to better prepare students who are in the Northern Virginia area for jobs that are going to be readily available for them when they graduate from this program.
All right, thank you. So next exciting thing, vaccines. They're currently available for anyone 16 and older, and it's expected that the Pfizer vaccine will receive emergency use authorization by the CDC and FDA for those 12 and older as soon as this coming week. PWCS has been in communication and collaboration with the Prince William Health District to explore ways to support expedited vaccinations for our students who are 12 years and older. The President announced yesterday that once approved, the vaccine is expected to be available to those 12 and older via pharmacies and pediatricians. Additionally, the Prince William County Health Department has secured the use of Gander Mountain or Veterans Park to provide vaccines for our students who are 12 years and older. PWCS will support vaccination efforts through assisting with communication of vaccinations, options, and organization for prioritized registration. This will include assistance with transportation for families if needed. Vaccination in schools has been discussed, but is not something the health department can immediately implement. The use of the current community options will be the most effective avenue due to the large number of students 12 years and older. The health department will continue to work with us to determine the needs of our students and work to provide vaccination support as needed. I'm so happy to share that the community use groups will now be allowed to begin scheduling and use of PWCS buildings beginning today, subject to compliance with all governor and CDC mandates and protocols. During the pandemic, we continue our important efforts to ensure that equity is embedded in all the work that we do. A recent report from the Virginia Department of Ed indicates that PWCS has the second most diverse certified workforce in Region 4. As a reminder, Region 4 includes all of Northern Virginia school divisions, as well as divisions to the west, including Shenandoah and Frederick, and to the south to Orange County. While we will always continue to aspire and work to be number one in this area, I commend Dr. Donna Eagle and the staff in the Department of Human Resources for their targeted efforts to recruit and retain diverse staff members. I'm excited to share that PWCS is committed to holding in-person graduations for our 2021 graduating seniors. Because of the pandemic, our high schools will limit tickets and adhere to social distancing requirements and other requirements based on Governor Northam's executive order. More information on our graduations can be found at www.pwcs.edu. I plan to attend as many of these ceremonies as I can to celebrate our students before I retire in June. As a reminder, we have increased our on-time graduation rate every year for the past 13 years to an all-time high of 93% for the 19-20 school year. I have had the pleasure of visiting a few schools in the past few weeks, including Reagan and Marsteller Middle Schools, as well as Piney Branch, Victory, Westridge, Chris Young, and T. Clay Wood schools. I'm continually amazed by our teachers and their innovative practices that they're using to ensure our students are receiving a world-class education even during a pandemic. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I recognize, especially in the middle of a pandemic, the importance of taking care of our own mental health, as well as the mental health of our students and our staff. Our professional counseling staff has worked so hard this year providing additional supports for our students. I am proud to share that 6 of our schools have earned the American School Counselor Association recognition for model counseling programs for our supportive students. This recognized ASCA model program, referred to as RAMP award, is given to less than 1% of all public and private K-12 schools in the United States since its inception in 2003. Congratulations to Marshall Elementary School and Forest Park High School, both earning the designation for the second time, and Rockledge and Kyle Wilson Elementary Schools. Kyle Wilson is a national school of distinction and only 1 in 5 in the nation. Freedom High School has earned the designation for the first time this year. And Independence Non-Traditional School has earned the designation for the 3rd time. Congratulations to these schools for their outstanding honor. Last week, I had the honor to participate in the Spark Superintendent's Business Breakfast, which was held virtually due to the pandemic. Spark Education Foundation for PWCS honored Amazon Web Services, Food Lion Store 1249, and I-66 Express Mobility Partners as Partnerships of the Year winners. Additionally, Spark recognized Novant UVA Health Systems with the Sharon Henry Community Partner of the Year for their coordination of the COVID-19 vaccinations for our staff members and others in our county. Congratulations. Due to the gathering limitations established by Governor Northam, PWCS held the Outstanding Educator Ceremony virtually last week. Congratulations to our Teacher of the Year, Jamie Juba from Fred Lynn Middle School, and Principal of the Year, Amy Schott from Rockledge Elementary School. Congratulations to all of our nominees, as well as our National Board certified teachers. And speaking of teachers, this week is Teacher Appreciation Week. I know our school division is recognizing teachers with shout-outs on social media, and individual schools are celebrating our teachers in their own way. But I want to take this opportunity to share how sincerely impressed I am with the efforts of our teachers, especially this year. There is no doubt that this has probably been the most difficult year in education in recent history. Our teachers have learned and implemented the use of new technologies and different instructional delivery strategies in a very short period of time. They are truly rock stars, and I cannot thank them enough for their outstanding efforts during this pandemic. This is also Nutrition Employee Recognition Week. Our school and food service nutrition staff have been working since the pandemic closed schools last March, serving millions of meals to our students and their families. They have truly been lifesavers during this difficult time. And speaking of lifesavers, May 12th is National School Nurse Day. When the pandemic began, many of our school nurses volunteered to help our county government to staff a COVID-19 hotline. But that's not all. Our school nurses served as critical staff during the vaccination clinics held for our staff members and our community. They continue to serve as important sources of information during this difficult time. You are appreciated. Because of the pandemic, Virginia code and authority granted by the General Assembly has permitted our school board agenda topics to be limited. Because of this limitation, we have temporarily suspended board recognition and approval of many proclamations honoring various observances. That being said, I do think it's important to mention these additional observances. May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Better Hearing and Speech Month, Brain Injury Awareness Month, National Physical Fitness and Sports Month, and National Tourette Syndrome Awareness Month. Today is National Bike to School Day, and this week is also the Exceptional Children's Week. Thank you, and stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Next, we'll move on to, well, it's back to you, Dr. Waltz. This is on the reopening. Paul, reopening.
Thank you very much. All right. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So our work in planning for next fall is guided by two major things. One is Virginia state law, and the key points you can see are listed here. Basically requiring the school board to offer full-time in-person instruction follow mitigation strategies to the extent possible, and as long as COVID-19 pandemic is in effect, to provide fully remote virtual instruction as an option to families. Number two, the directive given to me by the school board on March 17th. Quote, the division superintendent and staff to prepare and present to the school board on May 5th, 2021, a reopening plan for the 2021-22 school year, which provides for 5 days a week of full-time in-person instruction for all students in all grade levels, and further, that the plan provide for an option for 100% virtual instruction for all students in all grade levels. And you may recall the night that you voted on that. We had a thorough discussion of that, and there were some other creative options that I thought you would be interested in, and many of our students and their families and our staff would be interested in. So you're going to hear a little about some of those tonight as well. Next slide, please. So the Virginia Department of Education takes the governor's rules, essentially, the CDC, the Virginia Department of Health, and they put together essentially the direction to school superintendents. And these are called SUPS emails, and they come, again, from the Virginia Department of Education. So the guiding directives for this fall, I quote, in addition to the in-person option, full or part-time virtual programs may be offered at the discretion of the division, and students and parents and guardians may opt into such offerings. However, the division should be prepared for and allow any virtual students to transition seamlessly to an in-person setting at any point during this next school year. The request for the transition may be due to personal preference or out of academic necessity and to ensure successful school outcomes. Next slide, please. So immediately we've had a task force, we've had several task forces that have worked through the pandemic, and we remobilized and expanded our Fall Learning 2021 task force. The task force is comprised of 78 members. They include teachers, counselors, principals, central office staff, PWE representatives. It was facilitated by Linmara Colon, the director of the Office of English Learner Programs and Services. There were subgroups that worked on elementary, middle, and high school. They met weekly with all members together, and the subgroups met additional times. They presented their recommendations and considerations to me and the superintendent's staff. And additionally, we did a survey since that directive was voted on by the school board. And in the division-wide survey results as of today, 85% are recommending or saying that they would choose in-person instruction. Of those saying they would be virtual, 45% of that remaining 15% said that having a vaccine for their student would change their preference. This would lead to 92% potentially in person. And again, I said as of today, but it's actually a couple of days ago, and we've received about 10,000 responses to date. So that is statistically significant, but we will continue to monitor those results and share them with you. Next slide, please. So these are the key principles for our fall learning plan. Ensuring academic success and social emotional support for all of our students. Serving students through their local community school and the independent, non-traditional school is what we prefer and was what the task force is recommending. Also, they're recommending in-person as the best option for the majority of our students. Elimination of concurrent teaching to the greatest extent possible. Reducing the complexity and creating ability to easily pivot to changing health guidance and allow virtual students to return in person during the year per the state requirement. Enhancing the virtual attendance requirements, such as live on-camera presence. Next slide, please. So what is the plan? First of all, we are, and the task force and the superintendent staff is in agreement, and in person, 5 days a week, default for all students. In other words, we'll plan for all students to be in person, but we will provide, number 2, a virtual option at all schools for all grade levels, as per the board directive. Number 3, this data that I just shared with you on the previous slide, they, as parents and guardians, will continue to have the opportunity to opt into virtual for the fall semester via the hub from May 24th to May 28th. So what is the difference between what we're doing now and that new set of dates? What we need to make sure everybody understands is these things are changing with COVID constantly. The directives are changing, social distancing is changing, masking rules are changing. And furthermore, we need to help principals and the staffs at buildings, counselors, those that are scheduling students and setting up classes to have specific recommendations from every family. So even though it won't be set in stone, we're going to open this window in the hub for the week of May 24th to May 28th to let every family say what they would choose if in fact they want to opt into virtual. So again, the default is 5 days a week in person for all students, but if specific families and students by student, by grade level, wish to opt for the virtual, that's the week they'll be able to do that. We'll pull that information together, and as soon as we do, we will immediately share it with you. Virtual students will be grouped together into virtual-only sections. This will help us eliminate the majority of the concurrent. High schools may supplement the school-based program and their schedules if needed with courses from Virtual Prince William, which is our long-standing and successful program that we have most recently been offering free to our students. It used to be quite expensive, as well as the state program, Virtual Virginia. Counselors and schools will advise parents and guardians and students if choosing the virtual selection that may be better served in person. In other words, you know, we feel like some students who may be on virtual might be better served if they were in person. So if counselors feel strongly about that, we want them to give that encouragement on in-person. School-age child care is planned for normal, in other words, pre-COVID conditions, with 62 elementary locations, which is what we previously had, and select middle school locations before and after school. So again, it depends on what our enrollment is, but we're hoping for a return to pre-COVID operations with our school-age child care. And again, we're delighted that the federal government and through the state and our efforts here locally and some of our elected officials at the local and state level, meals will be available during the pandemic at no cost for all students. Next slide, please. Schools will follow modified bell schedules to accommodate extra runs for elementary school buses to ensure no more than 2 students are to a seat. Now, you may have picked up the fact that we're bringing students a little closer together. Again, the CDC, Virginia Health Department, seem to feel that if mitigation is going well, which overall I think we've done very well, that we can have the students wearing masks and get 2 kids to a seat. Bell times will vary by school, but approximately the high schools will go from 7:30 in the morning to 1:40 in the afternoon, middle schools 8:10 a.m., 2:25 p.m. For elementary students, the first run will be 9 a.m. to 3:10, second run will be 9:30 to 3:40 p.m. Virtual sections and classes will be embedded in the daily bell schedules. There will be 2 exceptions to that. The exceptions will be Virtual Prince William And again, this is not something new. What is new is we continue to expand Virtual Prince William and some of the course offerings. But Virtual Prince William has been offered to our students for some time for students who may want to take a required course ahead of time or supplement their coursework so they can have an elective in person at school, and Virtual Virginia. Next slide, please. Our virtual students will be grouped together into virtual-only sections and classes. They may be slightly larger than typical classes depending upon how the overall numbers fall. All class size guidelines and Virginia standards of quality that apply to in-person classes will apply to the virtual and/or hybrid classes. So again, I don't need to read all this detail, but you can see we actually broke down what our class size limits are, and we will adhere to those whether in person or virtual. Limited number of classes may not be available virtually. So, for example, we know we have some complex CTE classes and some of our specialty programs that have tremendous hands-on work. And as you know, we brought those students in on Mondays to deal with their needs. So I just want to be clear that there may be some classes that it would be impossible to do 100% virtual. We will, however, make absolutely sure that the courses required to move to the next grade and courses required for graduation, that both options are possible. Next slide, please. Virtual Virginia offers limited course selection primarily in the core academics. Again, what you would need for promotion and what you would need for graduation. This is an expanded program. This will be one of the options available. And again, I'm proud to say that this amazing team of teachers and administrators who worked on this task force are giving more options than you hear in some of our other local school divisions. A second option, base school will still be responsible for, well, this is not another option. This is just something important to say at this point. The base school is still responsible for all the related and support services. So for making sure that IEPs are attended to appropriately, that you have the appropriate equipment, that counseling services are available, regardless of the program that you choose. The base school is responsible for performance and accountability. So, you know, if you're taking a Virtual Virginia program, we would still have counselors monitor the performance of those students, or our own Prince William County virtual program. So what does all this cost? And in number 4, we broke it down by elementary, middle, and high school. And again, I'm not going to go through all of this. It's pretty simple math. But the fact of the matter is all these options cost money. The point I want to make here, if you go drop down to number 5, is its cost comparable if all virtual students placed into Virtual Prince William due to the increase in staffing needs. So if you were to offer all those same courses on our own Virtual Prince William, you're going to have about the same cost because you would have to increase the staffing. So a couple other clarifications that I would like to make and on the money piece. So as it stands now, like for example, if people would be interested in a Virtual Prince William approach, that money that would go into the per pupil for that school would follow that student. So that's very important to note. So, you know, there's principals that are looking at that and concerned about that. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing this early identification. Again, it is not set in stone for a parent or a student, but it helps us with our planning and it gives us options. Next slide, please. So again, I want to say that the task force and the staff and myself are recommending the elimination of the concurrent teaching to the greatest extent possible. And I want to talk about what might some of those exceptions be. Because I think it's very important, you know, I've learned a lot over the past year. And one of the things that I think is really helpful to the school board and the community is to look at the good and the bad up front. So, you know, what we tried to do in the beginning of all of this was be optimistic, be hopeful, we're going to be able to do everything. And as time went, you know, we had some struggles, and the board had more of an interest in tell us the whole picture and let us hear from some other people with boots on the ground. So in presenting the fall plan, I want to put some of these things and lay them before you tonight. So when might concurrent teaching still be needed? If there's a quarantine that occurs requiring impacted students to have concurrent teaching during that period of time. Scheduling of virtual-only sections will be maximized within schools and may include students across schools, and additionally may require limited use of concurrent teaching in some cases. Okay, what does that mean?
Excuse me one sec, Dr.
Sure.
Waltz. Jason, I think someone texted and said the feed is down. Can you guys check at home, see if we're still online or on cable or whatever we're supposed to be doing? Go ahead, Dr. Waltz, sorry
Sure.
about that.
Testing? Testing? Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
All right, so again, I'm on 2B, and since the feed went down, let me go through 2B again. Scheduling of virtual-only sections will be maximized within schools and may include students across schools, additionally may require limited use of concurrent teaching in some cases. All right, what does that mean? So I'm going to walk you briefly through a couple of examples. Let's say you have a particular school and they only have 5 first graders that want to be virtual. And the school 10 minutes up the road has 20 kids signed up virtual and can take those 5 kids from that same classroom. It's basically a bureaucratic transfer online to be able to accommodate a full section. Because again, we don't have unlimited amounts of money. So that might be one example. So here's another one. You've got a classroom, let's take 5th grade. And let's say you have 5 sections of 5th grade. And it just so happens to fall out that you've got 1 all virtual, 3 all in person, and about 12 and 12 left over virtual and in person. And you've got a teacher that says, I don't mind doing concurrent. I kind of took this as a challenge. I love technology. I'm more than willing to do it. If a situation like that were to occur, that would help us out. We would work with that principal to make absolutely sure that, you know, that delivery method from that particular teacher at that school and that grade level were successful this year, so we'd have every reason to believe it would be successful next year. And then, if they're teaching concurrently, we would provide an additional stipend. And as you can see, well, I'll drop down to number 4 since I'm on that topic. We are talking to, right now, all the HR people in the other school divisions about what they might be offering for a stipend with concurrent, because several of us are talking about that as a limited option. So their next meeting is still 2 weeks away, something like that. So I will come back to you and let you know kind of what the recommendation would be on a stipend for someone who's doing concurrent. Now I'll back up to number 3. Teachers will be asked to volunteer to teach concurrent sections, or during quarantine, we may ask them, you know, we may need them to do it for 7 days or 10 days. These quarantines have come down, some of them. So they used to be absolutely 14 days. Then I think they dropped to 10 now. So, you know, if we really need somebody to do this, but they don't particularly want to do it, we'll still pay them a partial stipend to do it during that quarantine period. And we think that will will help a lot. Next slide, please. So schools will follow the mitigation strategies in effect at the time. Now, what does that mean, at the time? Whatever the governor's executive order states for that point in time, we will follow those mitigation strategies to the greatest extent possible. Well, what does that mean? Just like we have made adjustments to the number of kids on the bus, just as we have tried to make accommodations for some parents who feel very, very strongly their kids need to be in 4 days. If we have the mitigation, if we have the face masks, if we can control the mitigation, again, we're going to do what's in the governor's order to the greatest extent possible. So let's talk about what might be subject to change. Classrooms. Physical distance to the greatest extent possible with a minimum of 3 feet with face coverings. We can't make a plan to bring in what the data is telling us is going to be 85% of the kids and say you're going to be 6 feet apart. But our mitigation has shown us that in classrooms where it's closer, with the students wearing masks and other mitigation, that we've been very successful. So again, that's where we're shooting for the classrooms. What about buses? Again, I mentioned this. Students will share seats with face coverings. So instead of 1 in a row, there are more than likely going to be 2 in a row. Cafeteria. Students will be separated 6 feet to the greatest extent possible. Again, you may be saying, well, what does that mean? I went to, I keep doing these school visits, and I shared some of those with you. And I watched the creativity of folks. And while I'm not saying, well, we just need to do this in every school, but there was a school I visited this week. They had the dividers. They had such enthusiasm around getting the kids back in person that they put them up in the cafeteria. And they actually got a little closer than the 6 feet, got some more kids in there. Their masks are off, but they have like a 3-foot divider, just like you see there, Miss Jessie's got it, and it goes around each child, and you can get a few more kids in. There are also a number of schools that are using alternating spaces. Like, I'll give you another example of a school I went to. They said, the music teacher, if these kids can't sing, she told me she's got to have them singing. So they turned the story room into the general music class in that elementary, and they were able to space the kids out with the governor's order 10 feet in the story room, and it worked. So we've got people really working hard to make this possible, and again, to follow the mitigation as much as we possibly can. But I have confidence that we will be able to meet the needs in the fall. Obviously, I'm not going to be here for that, but I'm going to try to set a plan in place, or at least show you what we hope to be able to do. And is there one more slide up there? I think yes, because this is really important. So obviously, this plan would be subject to change. There may be something in there that 5 or more members of the board don't like. Well, then we need to look at what that is. Dr. McDade, she may want to make some changes. She's in a big school division. She's been very interested in what we're doing. I'm in constant contact with her. We're sharing the drafts of things with her. I am meeting with her on the phone, FaceTime, and in person. And we're just getting ready for our second in person. All of these things are under her control in terms of her meeting with me. She has initiated all of them, and I have told her that I would be available to her at all times whenever she wanted to talk. So she asked me, could the staff send her as the task force was moving along, could they send her some of the drafts? Absolutely was the answer. So she is very much in tune with this plan. And I also told her specifically on Sunday, we had a FaceTime conversation. I said, listen, Dr. McDade, if, every so often we find somebody's got a fantastic idea that nobody else thought of. So if there's something that you think we've missed, and in the Chicago Public Schools you put this into place and it's worked well, let me know or let us know. And she has complete freedom to talk to Deputy Iman and any member of the superintendent's staff. She does not need to go through me, and I do not need to be on those calls. I want her to have access. So that's number two. So, every time you have a plan, there's a bunch of questions. And we've spent nights where we've been here till 2 in the morning on those questions. But what we finally started doing was the Q&As, which you could look at a plan, think about your questions, submit them, we would give you the answers, and post all of those to the website. And I think actually that's worked quite well, especially the last couple of months. So again, we are prepared, and we're asking you if you could submit your questions through that Q&A process. We will answer them in a timely fashion. We will post them to our website for the entire community to see. And then this plan, the beginning of this plan, is not set in stone. Again, it's not set in stone. And I'm not asking you to vote on it. I'm just saying we will begin sharing that to our families this week so that they have a sense of what's coming. We want to make sure they know that we're going to ask them if your kid wants to be in person, you don't have to do anything. But if you think you want them virtual, then you'll go into the hub. They're used to this. They've had 3 opportunities to do it this year, so they know how to do it. But we want to make sure that they're starting to get in the loop this week on where we're going for next year. And we're very excited about this. I want to add one final thing, and that is we have, in the past, had some situations, and again, I mentioned this one other time, but it's a great example. Brentsville District High School was so overcrowded one year that with one-way halls, alternative lunchrooms, and everything else, it was determined, and I think it might have been Battlefield, we did this as well. We offered a couple of online courses at the beginning of the day, and I think at the end of the day. We paid for those, so the kids didn't have to pay for them. It was optional to do it, but we were able to reduce the number of kids in the school because of dramatic overcrowding. Okay, well, the only overcrowding we have right now is because of the social distance. So this may be something that some principals are interested in doing, that we've had practice with this. It has worked effectively, and we're going to give those opportunities again. And then thankfully, we're opening 2 huge schools. So this, our newest high school, our newest middle school, that is going to help tremendously with these issues. So that concludes the basically unveiling, so to speak, of our fall plan. I want to thank all the task force members, because I'll tell you what, all of these teachers and the administrators as well, doing their full-time job and then meeting every week, and then the subgroups also meeting every week, has been a huge task and responsibility for which I think I speak for you as well. We are eternally grateful for their input. Chairman Lateef, I'll turn it back to you.
Wonderful, Dr. Waltz. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for bringing that to the board so quickly. And thank you, as I'd like to echo Dr. Waltz's statement, for all the folks that helped prepare this and work on all the groups. I guess I'll start with Mr. Wilk has a question. And remember, the questions we can also...
That's what I was going to ask you, sir. Yeah. So just your prerogative on this, because honestly, if one board member starts asking questions, we're all probably going to jump in just because we're all going to want our questions. So how do you want to handle this, like at this point, if Dr. Waltz is suggesting we do the Q&A through
Sure, I think that's fine. I think tonight would be if you wanted to ask a question, if they had the answer, they could answer really quickly. If not, just assume it's part of the Q&A. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on a lot of statements. Tonight would be more just questions if you had any.
Okay, so I do have I'll be minimum. You brought up a couple scenarios about the concurrent. You gave two good elementary examples. Can you elaborate? I guess I'll too quick. This will be my first thing. Can you elaborate a little bit more about what it would look like at a high school? Why there may be a need for concurrent at a high school level? You gave some elementary examples. Given the course complexity and the number of courses and the variety and electives and things like that at a high school level and scheduling, I'm curious if you could elaborate for the board and the community scenarios where high school might need to have concurrent.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Wilk, as you know, in high school, there are many unique courses for which you may only have one teacher who's able to teach that. So if the course schedule were to fall out where maybe an AP physics teacher was able to teach 2 classes in person, and then right from their same classroom, teach 2 classes virtually in a week, but there may be a crossover, in which case there's another AP physics class that's hanging out there with both virtual and in person. That's an example of where we might go to that teacher and say, look, would you be willing to do one concurrent? Or we know they've been highly successful doing it. And we're hoping that incentivizing it with a stipend would also help. But that would be one example at the high school level.
Okay, and my last thing, to respect the timeline and everything else, we'll go through Q&A. I'm already getting asked why, if you could explain to the community a little bit more elaboration on why we need to have these decisions, or at least the initial selections, early, as opposed to waiting all the way till July and August. What is the complexity that goes into the staffing, determining who's going to do what, the courses offered? Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I have already people saying this is too short of a window. We want to know more about how the fall is going to look before we make a determination on if our child's going to be virtual or not. So can you elaborate or explain a little bit more in detail all the complexity and the work that goes behind the scenes to make this happen and unfold for the next school year?
Absolutely. So we got our budget passed, thankfully, and we were able to, mitigation is like one of my favorite words now. We were able to mitigate the reduction in a way that we didn't have to make cuts. So what happens now with the budget? So every budget holder in the school division, so every school is a budget holder. And then within that school, there are various departments. So for example, in high school, you got your fine and performing arts department, your English department, science, and so forth. The same thing in middle school. In elementary, you're organizing kids by grade level. So there's a per pupil amount of money that goes to those budget holders. Same with central office. The second thing that happens, and I love this opportunity because I love the fact that several people stated in the equity presentation, we've been doing a lot of equity work, but it's sort of been not necessarily in full view. We have equity dollars for free and reduced lunch students, where every one of those students gets additional money, doesn't matter what school you go to. Special needs students, there's additional funding. Our EL students, for every one of those children, there's additional funding. So if you're Ms. Jessie, who used to be principal of Vaughn Elementary, you're going to get your budget in just a couple of weeks now that the budget's approved. And you're going to have to sit there and figure out how many kindergarten teachers, how many first grade teachers. If you're in middle school, you're going to have to figure out, how many family and consumer life teachers am I going to need? And how many are going to need to be virtual and how many are in person? And then you have to look at your staffing, who's retiring, who's transferring to another building, and you're faced with hiring needs. Okay, hiring is extremely competitive in this region. When students graduate from college and they want to teach, they shop. If they're going to be coming to this part of the country, you better believe they're going to be looking at Prince William and Loudoun and Fairfax and Montgomery County, Maryland. They're going to shop. And we have to be ready to hire the best people if we want to continue our good progress in our efforts. So there's really no time to waste on this. That being said, we will have to have some discretion on changes that happen after this next window is open with the hub, because there are going to be some families that through various circumstances, they feel it's very important. And part of what the state is saying, and part of what I believe this board has said, is if somebody wants to go from virtual to in-person, we've got to make it seamless, as hard as it may be, as challenging as it may be. The thing is, the numbers are going to be less. So it's not like converting thousands of people from virtual to in-person on a dime. But we have to give the principals and the budget holders the ability to get moving with all of this. And then look at what the high school counselors are doing. They're scheduling all the students now. So for those folks who say, I need more time, I think it's really important for, I'm glad you asked the question. It's really important for us to help them understand some of those reasons. Because once you sit down and explain that to somebody, it's not hard to understand.
That was outstanding. Can't wait till we post this so I can share that clip, because you can do it way better than I can in that explanation. Thank you.
Ms. Williams? Oh, Ms. Jessie.
Hi. I don't think this question, I have several questions, and I'll do the Q&A, but I do have one question I think that's important. In your plan for when students return, some are virtual, some were hybrid, and some are now 4 days a week. Is there any way any universal assessment of where these kids are and where their learning will start? And will you look at the difference between those students who are virtual versus those students that in-school learning? That's one question. I have another one.
Okay, sure. So, and I hope you didn't mind me using you as an example of a principal, because I knew you would know exactly what I was talking about.
Thank you. As a principal, I'm going.
Yeah, you're glad you're retired, right?
Another question. Did you have principals on that task force?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. It's going to be rough.
Yeah.
But could you answer that question?
Yes. So let me clarify again. We would be planning for 5 days in person and 5 days virtual. And then there may be some other iterations. Like, for example, there's any number of seniors that may only need 2 or 3 courses to finish up. Or they may have 2 required courses, but they want to take them online. So those things would go on in a normal year. So in terms of figuring out where they are, obviously, we expect people to be doing ongoing formative assessment on a daily basis. And obviously, we have the summative assessments with the grading. Problem with grading is it doesn't necessarily tell you a lot. We're using rubrics, we're standards-based. We hope that everybody's doing that. But the bottom line is, there was a part of one of those slides where I talked about counselors being able and administrators to talk to families and students, because if their performance has not been, if they've not done well under virtual, we need to be counseling those kids to come in person. And if they insist on being virtual, we need to say, look, we're going to set you up with a counselor to talk through why you don't want to be on the screen. But your teacher, by and large, with a few exceptions, needs to be able to see you, to talk with you, to see that you're engaged. It's hard enough doing it online, but if the screen is black, then that's really difficult. So those are some of the options that address the performance.
Because I don't see the, or do you see the SOL data providing any diagnostic or pre-test kinds of information?
Well, you know, that's, the state has actually said that's why we are insisting on doing it, so that you can use that as a precursor to determine where a student's growth has been over the past year. So, you know, when we have these superintendent's calls, that's one of the things that they were like, well, why didn't you give us a pass on those again this year? And it's for the very reason you spoke of. We've got to have some ability to look at where the kids ended this year. And so people have a place to start.
And I guess my other question is, thinking through the lens of a principal, the lunch schedule and the bell schedule. I'm looking at the two layers of, you know, you've got two groups of kids coming in for elementary. So the bus is not going to get there until 3:40 or something of this nature. Have we looked, does that align with the teacher's contract time? Because I can remember buses coming in at 5 o'clock sometimes, just regular. So that's one of the concerns that I have.
So the answer to that, the short answer is yes. And because when we brought more kids back, we had to start some of those second runs, we were able to work through those contractual issues. So yes, we were able to address that.
25 kids in a class. How do you you guys have measured, can you mitigate three seats, 3 desks apart? And because I noticed you had 25 kids in a classroom. So if you have 25, how do you mitigate that? And then I won't ask any more questions. I'll save my other 10 questions to send to you.
Okay, Miss Jessie. So again, you know, to the extent we possibly can, we'll spread them out. But again, that example I used of the school that I was in where they had the dividers up, I mean, they were actually able to get the kids closer together because they obviously have to take their mask off to eat. But I was like, oh my gosh, I've been to, I think it's 40 schools in person, and I had not seen that. And I was like, okay, because, you know, I heard from one board member who said that the kid couldn't come 4 days a week because they didn't have any more room in the lunchroom. Bingo. Okay. Send them to Keith Emon, spelled with an I.
At pwcs.edu. Ms. Williams.
Thank you. First, I want to start by saying thank you to Dr. Waltz and Mr. Iman and the entire team that was able to put this plan together. I think it was really important for our parents to be able to have this conversation with the school division and get this information. I know that the state made a law, right? But still, it doesn't get down to some of the nuances of what each individual division is or isn't going to do. And then having said that, I have a little issue with the Q&A. I know it works in the advantage of time, and there's been plenty of constituents out there who are like, you know, we don't want to have marathon board meetings, and I'm not advocating for that by any means. We've had a couple now lately where I've gotten home pretty early and shocked my kids, and probably no chores were done because they were like, Mom's not coming home. But the reason why I have an issue with that is because there are a lot of members of our public who really rely on getting the information from watching a school board meeting. And I don't think it takes into consideration, and I'm not saying that we should all have limitless Q&A, but I do think that there is a tremendous amount of value in having board members, even if it's limited 2 to 3 questions or 1 round of 5 minutes each or something, to really ask some of the high priority questions for those constituents or members of the public that maybe watching it on TV with closed caption, or maybe they're not literate, or maybe whatever reason they have, there's a tremendous amount of value in that, right? Especially now in a culture where the majority of us are snippet 30-second, minute 40-second, 140 character people. So I would ask that the division sort of reevaluate that moving forward, and maybe give us a, you know, if it's helpful for the division staff to be able to answer questions, if we could sort of reevaluate how that looks for us so that we are able to have that communicative time for those individuals that really rely on it. Because one of the things I think Ms. Ralston has been saying a lot lately too is, if you go to the website, it's intuitive to us and those who are really, truly every day they're digging around and they know our website, where to go find this information. But for a lot of folks, it's not. They know the Q&A is posted there, but then they have to go through and read and find the answer to their question, and then they have to understand it. And that can be very intimidating, especially to people who are not natural readers or looking for just summaries or aren't very good at navigating a website, or maybe don't even have access to a website, in a certain amount of time, right? Some of our families maybe only utilize the computer for their student school work or for their class time, and they're not as familiar with going in and looking for where this information may be. So I think that that's something to consider. And then when we do post the Q&A, if there is a way to make it easier to digest, or even if it's something on our main website that says, click here, and they go to another site. Because I think what we've done is miraculous. It's not a critique on it. I think it's great, but that has definitely been some of the commentary I've heard from members of my constituents and the general public is, it's too much information to dig through. We can't find the answer to this question. And I'm good for saying we've done everything except just physically go up to someone's door and read it to them. But I think in these circumstances during a pandemic, it's overwhelming sometimes. Just as you mentioned earlier, how many staff have done their meetings and they're also on this council and that council and this council. I think everybody on this board can identify with that. We're all working jobs and we're doing school board and then we're also participating on other things. Sometimes you just don't have the energy to figure out where it is, even though it may be important. So I just wanted to throw that out there for consideration, not only for you to hear, Dr. Waltz, but also because I know Dr. McDade watches, and that's something to be thinking of. You don't have to repeat it twice.
So Ms. Williams, let me just say, first of all, I'm taking all your points to heart. Let me say this. We've had a lot of practice because of all the changing dynamics. And as we start rolling this out this week, I think it would be great for you to take a look, because I think you're going to be pleased with how easy it is to understand, and the use of what has now become pretty common, which is Scoop especially, and then the Twitter and Facebook, and then the translations that we do. But give us feedback if there's something that we can improve on. And then there's another huge change that's happened that I think really speaks to your concerns. And that is, on March 13th, everything came to a grinding halt. And I would say most people I knew had a very high level of concern. And I know when I went the first time to the grocery store, there was like almost nobody out there. And all of that has changed as vaccines have gotten on, the rates have gotten better. We've pulled our faculties and staff back into the building. This is the one thing I would say. When you talk to a parent that can't find an answer to something, tell them to call the school, because the teachers are now answering their phones, everybody in central office, the administration, but we have people on duty full-time, 5 days a week minimum. And that's something else that, I'm a parent too, so I've once in a while had that. But tell them to call the school, call the teacher, call an administrator, call the counselor, and then give us feedback. But if you've got some questions you want to hit me right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, because I think that's also something we've forgotten to do too. It's not
exactly.
Not something I used to easily pick up the phone, but it's gotten out of practice as well.
Right.
So I think that's helpful. But again,
and then we'll ask our advisory councils to assist with this as well, because they're a great source of connection with parents and families.
Thank you. And I do want to say I'm very appreciative of the uptick in use of text messages, because it's something I advocated before in the past, and it's easy sometimes to ignore a robocall. And it's hard to sometimes get on a website, but everybody checks their phone for a text message, and it's a good reminder. Not a fan of getting bombarded by them, but I've gotten, I think, 3 or 4 about take the division survey.
Yes.
I don't find it intrusive, and I think it's very helpful. But yes, I'd still like to have some type of Q&A because there are just some parents who not going to call or maybe aren't as literate or whatever the case may be. And, it's our job to sort of service everyone. So for our high-profile questions, I would just like to ask that we have some time, even if it's structured, to be able to have that conversation like you and I are having now. I think it has a lot of value to it. And then the only other thing that I have to ask, and I'll submit questions, there's a lot of conversation about students having to opt in for virtual now, and you just explained why. Will there be options, God forbid, or whatever forbid, if the need increases and the pandemic worsens, for example? Like, everyone's planning, the majority of us are planning to send their children in person. The future looks bright now, but say late July, something happens and some crazy variant with two heads pops out of nowhere, and parents are concerned again. And maybe they want their student that they were planning to send in person to now be at home. That's not really addressed in this plan, and I just want to make sure that that's being thought of, or there'll be some sort of way that parents can then, because we can opt them in person seamlessly according to this plan, but it doesn't really address what happens if you're an in-person and something happens and you want to go virtual. And I think that that's important too, because we're excited about students for vaccines for 12 and up, but there's really not a lot of chatter for elementary school students. And I think that that's often forgotten, is that, if you're a person, you can transmit the disease if you get it. So we're not having that conversation, and I just want to make sure that that gets addressed. You don't have to answer that now.
I can.
But I wanted to make sure that that question was asked publicly.
Sure.
Because I think it's really important.
I can and I will.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Waltz.
So maybe it would have been better for me to say, when I talked about pivoting, that we have to be able to pivot the other way as well. So the good news in all of this, I'm always, me, I'm an optimist. So I'm always looking for the silver lining. When March 13th hit, and we discovered we had tens of thousands of kids that didn't have a computer, or even if they had a computer in their house, if they had 4 kids, this was difficult. Then we had people without connectivity. We addressed all of that. We have a computer for every kid now. We will have a computer for every kid next year. We will have connectivity to every household. If they can't afford it, we'll pay for it just like we are now, using our federal funds. And our teachers have taught virtually. As painful as that has been to some, and as successful as it has been to others, the expectation will be that they could revert to that, and it would go much better than last time, simply because so many of those obstacles have been relieved. So absolutely, yes, that expectation would be both directions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, because if you're having parents who are opting in for virtual, just like Mr. Wilk was saying, it's so early in the year, there's going to be that concern. What if I didn't pick virtual and then something happens? Can I get my kid in virtual? Can I get my student in virtual, just like I could get them in person? So I appreciate that. All the other questions I have, I'll submit, and I appreciate you taking the time to answer them, because
Absolutely,
I think it's
Ms.
important
Williams.
for our public to hear and be able
Absolutely.
to get it right now.
Ms. Jackson.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation today, and I think you added a lot of the information from what was on board docs before, so you've answered some of my questions. I've had some concerns from some constituents in the Brentsville district about making a decision by May 24th. It's kind of piggybacking to what Mr. Wilkes and a little bit and what Ms. Williams said. They kind of want to know what the virtual program is going to look like and how it compares to virtual Virginia, or like maybe homeschool. And I don't want to lose these parents, because they are going to have to make a quick decision. So that was something I would advocate for, is a clear definition of what virtual instruction looks like and how equity between one school and another. But if you don't mind, could you please explain what preferred means on slide 5?
Which number was that?
It's on slide 5. I think, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, number 2, serving students through their local community school and independence non-traditional school is preferred. Okay, again, this is one of the key principles from the work of the task force, that because we're getting kids vaccinated, because our mitigation is no longer an experiment, it's shown to be effective, that the task force believes that in school or serving students through their local community school is preferred. So I'll give you another actual example of a principal who had a conversation with me last week out in your neck of the woods. They said, well, Dr. Waltz, what if I don't know what your plan is going to say, but what if you just say what one school division did and said virtual Virginia is your only option, and I have 150 of my kids that are going to do virtual Virginia. That money follows my kid to virtual Virginia. They see all these other kids successfully coming back, and they change their mind 5 weeks into the year. I'm not going to get any money back from virtual Virginia because they had to hire their teachers. So we're giving people choices, but we're also saying it's preferred to have these options through your local school. So we have principals who are prepared to set up the virtual option as they have this year if they have a classroom, a third grade that needs it, or a particular set of required courses where the money stays in the local school community. So it says serving students through their local community school and the independence non-traditional school is preferred. They're just saying that was a recommendation over having just the virtual option be virtual Virginia, for example. Does that help?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So in addition to advocating, a clear definition of what virtual instruction looks like so parents can make a informed decision, but it sounds like the 24th is not set in stone.
So there's a week for them to give their preference to start this huge complex process of staffing every one of our 100 schools. But I will continue to say it is not set in stone. And, it sounds to me, we'll see what the data shows, and I'll definitely be reporting it straight back to all of you. But my hunch is that if the vaccinations continue, the numbers in our region continue to get better, our mitigation is proving to work pretty successfully, that those numbers are going to stick. And that the majority of people, I think we've already seen the 10,000, are going to want to be in person. But if that changes after that date, and there are 5%, and I realize 5% is still several thousand kids, but if there's 5% of the parents in June and July that want to change, I think we're obligated to try to accommodate that. Our parents and their students are our customers. And because of that, there's a lot of reasons why people make the choices they do. And I think we are a school division that provides parents more choices than any other place I know. And I think we should be proud of that. And I think we should continue to do that. And so if we have some folks that change their mind after that preference, I feel we should make every effort to accommodate them.
All right, thank you, Dr. Waltz. That's helpful. I just have one more question, and it has to do with the Q&A process, so I can submit my other questions. I'd like to consider maybe amending the Q&A process, because it's great. It was great because I know that Kelly staff were very overwhelmed in the beginning with the pandemic, and they needed 2 weeks to get back to us. But right now, with everybody having to make quick decisions, especially if you want accurate numbers by the 24th, is it possible to consider not waiting 2 weeks again to get our answers? Because we submit it by Friday, and then we don't get answers until the following board meeting. And And if we're going to publicize it in a more apparent location, it might be helpful for the public to get more rapid responses. Is it possible to address that?
So what that involves, essentially, from the deadline to the next meeting is a week and a half. That was, I'm speaking my opinion, not the writers. But anyone who's answering those questions is stopping something that they're doing in order to help, which is important because people need those answers, or at least, a lot of those answers are important. What has happened recently, the Q&As have dialed down, so there's fewer of them. If you could try to limit the numbers of questions, say like to 3 people each, or 3 each, we could get those out as soon as we get them answered. We could try to move that up to say maybe a week and see how that works.
Okay, great. And it could be a continued dialogue of what...
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Wall?
Just going along, I agree with Ms. Jackson. If we could, we'll ask fewer questions, maybe better questions, and a quicker turnaround and maybe a little more obvious location. The other day I looked for the board Q&As on the website and it took me a long time to find them. I know I should be able to know exactly where they are, but I'm not sure about that. Anyway, somebody.
Well, we will redouble our efforts and try to make something that when the website appears, Q&As about the fall plan comes up. And my guess is, knowing Mr. Guilfoyle, he's probably already done that, but we'll make sure.
That's awesome. Thank you. So I have a couple of quick questions. How many students do we have that are 12 years old and older approximately? Do we know, what are we looking at for 12 and older in our division? Like 30,000, 40,000? That's a random question.
Yeah, you would have to. I would have to do my own math problem, which I can probably do. But
No
so we have about 90,000 kids, and we have pre-K to 12, so that's 13 grade levels. So roughly 7,000 kids a grade level, if my math is correct. But that was a speedy math.
So quite a lot of kids, actually. Yeah.
Yes.
A good maybe half? I don't know, 12? No, it wouldn't quite be half. Okay, all right. That's great. So I have a question it's on slide 2.
Okay.
Maybe it's a legal question, but this is kind of the way my brain works. So in point 1, as long as COVID-19 pandemic is in effect, school board may provide fully remote virtual instruction options. So the question then becomes, if the pandemic were declared over, would we still be offering a virtual option? Or is the remote option, put another way, is the remote option contingent upon the existence of a declaration of a pandemic? Or are we going to continue the virtual option regardless? Let's say Governor Northam says, guys, pandemic is over. We're just, this is sort of endemic now. It's going to circulate at a very low level. I'm optimistic too.
Right.
But
So,
do you understand?
yes, I do. I understand the question. So one thing I learned a few years back, Division Counsel, Ms. McGowan, who's expert on all these things, likes to make sure she has the appropriate time to give an absolutely correct legal answer. Okay. So we will ask her to consider that, not answer it now. But I will give you my understanding of it, or my thoughts about it. And that is that what I heard from this board over the last year or so is that the board's interested in looking at expanded virtual options. And so, for example, in the budget process, you looked as part of our CIP, this virtual high school concept. And then as more discussion happened in our work sessions, and I remember Ms. Williams talking about, she's one of the people that as a mom, she felt things went really well for her child, and in fact, maybe better than if he would have been in person. And so why can't we be looking at those options for elementary? And so that has sort of morphed, and what I sense from the board is the board was interested in exploring some of those kinds of options as we move further. So although if the pandemic is legally over, I don't think there's that obligation just to provide a carte blanche. I think the board has expressed an interest in, for example, more courses at the high school level is one that I've heard. And a couple years back it was, you know, if we're really talking equity, why do these kids have to pay $400? And we managed to get that changed before COVID, thankfully. So I think, again, it's part of the great choices that Prince William County Public Schools, under the leadership of this board and previous boards, has really fostered. Where I see, I'm just going to add one more thing. Where I think there's some concern that I would have as an instructional leader of the school division is, you know, you take, I'll give you one example of a recent visit. I'm out at Marsteller. Marsteller is a school that they have a couple of vocal teachers there that are just off the chart. Those kids lobbied me so hard 2 years ago, even after I'd visited their school and listened to class after class sing. They started this lobbying campaign to come to their concert. So even though I told them I spent 6 hours at Marsteller that year, that in one day listening to them, I came to the concert. So when I was out there this past week, I said to one of those vocal teachers, I said, how have you been doing? She said, it's been very difficult, but we've made some strong growth. I said, well, what did you do? And she said, I've been teaching the advanced groups almost like master classes. And she said, the enthusiasm picked up. I can tell the growth that they're making in music. But you go to a battlefield and you think of the kinds of productions that Mr. Burney did over there. And you think, well, if you're trying to separate a bunch of these kids into all virtual, and he's trying to produce the program he did pre-COVID, that's going to be pretty hard to do. I'm not saying impossible. But I think we want to protect our options, but to the extent possible, I think we need to try to get the majority of our kids in person and in-person programs. Not all.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, I'm a huge fan of the music programs that we have in Prince William County. It's one of the things we do really, really well.
Agreed.
And I'm worried about what, at the high school level, what might happen, because at each high school we only have usually one choir teacher, one band teacher, one orchestra teacher. And so if you have students who want to be virtual and they want to take band, for instance, what do we do? Do we create a virtual band section? Because I know concurrent, I mean, those teachers, you know, God bless them, they've been trying, but it is not ideal. It's actually been really hard.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So,
and I applaud all their efforts. And I mean,
right.
you know, because I have a music background myself, you know, when they do these recordings where they have each kid sing to a sing track and they put the whole thing together, they love sending that stuff to me because they know I'm going to respond. But I think the good news is on this preliminary data, it looks like 85% want their kids back, and of the 15%, almost half of those, if their kids are vaccinated, are going to change to in-person. Plus, we're vaccinating all the high school, or you know, it's open to all high school kids now. So I'm pretty optimistic that the vast majority are going to want to in-person. But you know, might we have to creatively think of some things like that in order to protect what we had before? Yes, I think that's something we need to have on the radar.
I appreciate that answer a lot. And just one quick follow-up question on that data. Do we have any specificity that you could share about, of those 90 or 85% and possibly 92%, are we talking mostly high school students that want to come back? Or are we looking at mostly elementary school? Because right now, you know, as we all know, like elementary school parents are knocking down the doors to get their kids in, but our high schools, like the Battlefield High School in my district is 25% back in person. I mean,
Right.
there's like 75, 25, you know. So is there anything you could say about that data at this point? Like, is it looking like?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, oh, is it looking like we're getting more high school students that are willing to come back as opposed to elementary? Does it correlate with the availability of vaccines, or is it still correlated with age? You know, young children versus older children?
We don't have that right now, but we will have it in the next round. We will know by grade level, we will know by school, and we will share all of that with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Zargarpur?
I will just send the questions. Just know I've had several music, art, PE type people, so I'll send those questions. I need them to know that I will ask on their behalf. Thank you for doing all of this and explaining how you want to. It was a concern of mine to think about doing a virtual program, and I kept thinking, why can't we just do the standalone program? But you did talk about if you've got 5 kids from one school and 20 from another, you could maybe work. So that makes me feel a lot better. I will just save the rest on the paper, and we'll do it that way.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Hey, Ms. Ralston, did you have anything to add?
No, I think I'll just pass.
Okay, thank you. So with that, Dr. Waltz, I don't have any questions to add. Thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate all the work you and your team have done. And we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thankfully.
Yes, thankfully. Very much so. Next, we'll move on to board matters. Folks, where would we start on Mr. Wilkes' side? He's got thumbs up and things like that.
I'm going to be happy with this. I feel like I'm going to pass. I'm good tonight, so thank you.
Okay, great. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. This week is Teacher Appreciation Week. I know this year was hard on both staff and students, and that many teachers are teaching concurrently, which means they're teaching 2 different ways of learning while trying to create a classroom that meets in-person and virtual needs. So I just want to take a moment and say thank you to all educators. My family and I watched the presentation put on by the school system for the educators who earn the National Board Certification of Teaching, and then those who were nominated for Teacher or Administrator of the Year. Congratulations to all those nominated, and also had the pleasure of watching the Sparks presentation, and I'm thankful for all our business partnerships and the legacy of Dr. Waltz and Mr. Iman and everybody who works for the school system. Thank you to the wonderful work of our nutrition employees. They've been on the ground working since March, and I am so thankful. And I also want to thank the advisory council members who volunteer to serve the District of Brentsville. And then lastly, it was wonderful to see the greenhouse today and the amazing staff that represents the spectacular Brentsville District High School. I'm so proud to represent them, and again, happy Teacher Appreciation Week.
Wonderful. Ms. Wall?
All right. One of my favorite quotes about teachers is, teachers have 3 loves: love of learning, love of learners, and the love of bringing the first 2 loves together. And so I just want to say to teachers for Teacher Appreciation Week, you are doing amazing work in bringing love of learning and love of learners together. And I know this has probably been the hardest year of your careers. Many of you have told me that. And I just want to thank you for all that you do, the seen and the unseen work that you do. I want to highlight some extraordinary teachers in the Gainesville district. At Mr. Ferreira and Battlefield, at Battlefield, organized over 70 staff. They did a massive stealth operation. They hand-delivered personalized yard signs to almost 700 seniors. And no parents were involved in this at all. Usually the PTO gets really involved in things like this and after grad parties and everything, but it was completely pulled off as a stealth operation, as far as I know, as far as I've been told, and to the surprise and the happy tears of many seniors. So thank you. And they did this on the first day of Teacher Appreciation Week. So that's a really great example of the kinds of teachers we have here in Prince William County. And I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge their efforts, and it really did make a big difference. Thank you to all of our staff for your hard work, everybody who was on this giant committee for Returning to Learn for the fall. Thank you, meeting every single week, and then as subcommittees, I know it's taken up a lot of your time, so thank you very much. Students, I want to say, if any of students are watching, hang in there and do your best work and make every moment count. Graduates of 2021, I'm looking forward to cheering you in person for graduation. I can't tell you how excited I am. I've got my gown ready. I can't wait. Athletes, good luck to all of the spring athletes. You're the last cohort of athletes to compete. We're all cheering for you. Families, appreciate your tireless advocacy for your children. I appreciate those who have reached out for assistance in trying to get kids back in school. I know you want what's best for your children, and you are our valued partners. And last of all, please, to the larger community, consider vaccinations for yourself and your children. It is effective, it's working, it's helping us get through the pandemic. And to all, good night.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to say happy Teacher Appreciation Week. It's always one of the hardest weeks for me as a board member because I just want to give all teachers stuff, but my board pockets don't reach that deep. So I don't think there really is truly enough things that we can give as individuals who are not teachers to teachers this year, especially Prince William County teachers, having to relearn your jobs multiple times in a year. And then continue to show up to work, to teach our children, to love on our kids. It really is a thankless job. I cannot say enough thanks for everything that you do. And people still say, well, teachers haven't done anything, and I encourage everyone who believes that, please go talk to a teacher, because I don't believe that at all. I think our teachers have just really shown the value of the teaching profession, how important it is. And how undervalued they really are in our society at large. So thank you, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week. Graduations I'm excited about, although I can't say without a little bit of tinge of sadness that last year's were really, really fun. There was some value add, I think, mostly for the students, not so much for the parents, and all the car parades and all of those fun activities that went by. I didn't hear too many seniors complain about not having to sit for 3 hours and some change, and so it was a really unique opportunity, but I am looking forward to seeing some of my adopted kids graduate and walk across the stage, so it'll be an exciting event as well. I want to thank again to the superintendent, give a lot of thanks again to the Superintendent's Advisory Council on Equity. I really, truly think that it was a historic presentation that they gave to us this evening. I am so very grateful that they are in existence, and I think that others who aren't involved in Prince William County Schools should really take an opportunity to look at our Equity Advisory Council and see the great work that we're doing, because I do believe that we are a lighthouse and a shining light on equity and what it looks like and what it can look like in a school division of our size and in our county. Thank you again to all the food staff and nutrition, as Dr. Waltz mentioned. They've been working since schools' buildings were closed. So I remember in the early parts of the pandemic, the food and nutritional officers out there, families driving up, handing out food. And again, that goes back to the teachers, because often you'd also see a teacher out there or a bus driver also helping. So thank you so much. I'm rushing a little bit because we're running out of time. I want to say to the teachers and all the people who are going in for their SOL, students who are taking their SOLs, just do your best. That we know it's not going to be perfect. It's hard to take a test in an environment you haven't been in all year. So take a couple deep breaths. That's what I told my little guy, and just go in there and do your best. And that's all that we're really looking for at this point in time. We know that you've worked hard and your teachers have worked hard, so try not to be so anxious. And the last thing I want to say is that for this board, as we select student representatives to this board, I've said it before, but I'd like this board to consider lowering the GPA to a 2.0 from a 2.5 or 2.3 where it currently is, so that we can capture more students. Because everybody's not a 2.5 student, but they could have tremendous capability and impact on this board. So I'd like you to consider that, and thank you.
Ms. Jessie.
You may have noticed that Mrs. Williams and I were exchanging notes, and she and I have the same feeling about these students. I mean, We've had some phenomenal students on this board, but I remember when I was an elementary principal and I was trying to form a discipline committee, and a teacher in the school said, "You want a discipline committee? I'll give you a real discipline committee." And she gave me the kids who had discipline problems on the committee. So the students that we've had on this board have been tremendous. I do think that we need to look at some students who are perhaps, not that they're not bright, but there are bright students who don't show up with GPAs, and they do offer. So I'd like to. So she and I both kind of supported that. I did a wellness check with my principals. I passed out those cups and I went from school to school. And when I was at Westridge, the principal was doing what he called a wellness check. He had coffee and donuts and he went from place to place and said, "How you doing? How you doing?" So I did a wellness check this week, and I think the principals are doing well, but I have to tell you that the teachers are really tired. So I say to the associates, you need to talk to these principals, because when I look at this list, I think of me, and I think of all the kids who came late, and I'm trying to figure out the money. Now I've got to figure out how many kids are going to be in the cafeteria. I've got mitigation. You need to do wellness checks with these principals and with the teachers. The teacher appreciation, it's, I do a little bit of writing, and I wrote something about the blue wave and nurses. Everybody talked about the nurses and the blue waves. And teachers were not a part of that blue wave. And so this week I've noticed on Fallon and on Today's Show that we're really doing something for teachers. So I'm not passing out a cup, but I will put my gratitude cup tribute back on the page to say that I appreciate and understand what a year it has been for you. Teachers have always given. When I was a principal, they gave me everything they had. And that simple little cup, which I didn't think meant much, meant a lot to them. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate you. And I also would like to congratulate Principal of the Year, Miss Amy Schott from the Occoquan District at Rockledge. She's a phenomenal principal. I think she's had some back surgery, and I'm saying this because I said, is she coming back in those high heels? If you know Amy Schott, she wears those spikes. But anyway, congratulations, Amy. Thank you very much.
Ms. Ralston.
Yes, I just really want to thank the teachers. They've had a tough year, and they stayed strong. And I want to say be blessed and try to have a really good year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ralston. Ms. Sar.
Thank you, Dr. Lateef. Yes, we have heard multiple times about Teacher Appreciation Week. Honestly, I think I said this last time, I believe that education is the best profession to go into. Teachers are my heroes. You do God's work. It's an everyday appreciation thing. I am always in awe of the things that people come up with to reach students who are just sort of maybe not quite there yet. I'm in awe of the teachers who are creative and create a whole new world inside their classroom, open doors to other pathways for our students. So I'm grateful, but I'm grateful every day. And I want to keep this short. I'm just, it's been a long year, so let's continue to wear our masks, right, Dr. Lateef? Wash our hands.
It's been working.
It's been working. And if you have the opportunity to take the vaccine, please consider it. It's going to save lives. Keep your distance. You can keep a little less distance with that vaccine, slightly. And if you're not feeling well, please stay home. But everybody, please take care of each other. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Ms. Zargarpur. All right, folks. Well, I missed the last meeting, and so I have a couple things to add here. Number one, first of all, if you are a student out there and things aren't going well for you, if you find that you don't have anyone to talk to, or if you don't have anywhere to turn to, you can always turn to your teacher or your counselor for help. I want you to always remember, if you're sitting at home and it's virtual, it doesn't mean there's nobody on the other side of that screen. There isn't anybody on, there are people on the other side of the screen. There are people on the phones. There are folks, your counselors are ready to hear from you. You can email them, contact them. Don't ever feel like there's nowhere to turn. And I think it's really important for all of our students to know that we have incredible teachers, and it is Teacher Appreciation Week. They do incredible things, and they've done incredible things. And one of the things they do that you don't hear a whole lot about is talk to their students about their mental health and where they are. And so if you are a student in need, please, before you do anything, you always have somewhere to turn to. And there are places to turn to. So and we have a website that has information about seeking mental help. So please look at our websites, and if there are any issues. So I think that's important. Moving on to a couple things. I want to thank the Board of County Supervisors for passing the budget last week and ensuring that we were near fully funding we've really fully funded our highest priorities for this budget, which included a 5% raise for our teachers. I can't think of, there are a lot of ways to thank our teachers, but in the 4 years I've served on this board, or the 4 budget cycles I've served, we've done a 4.8% raise 3 years ago, 4.8% raise 2 years ago, a 2.4% raise that should have been a 4.8 but was knocked down because of the pandemic last year, and a 5% this year. Those are the highest sets of raises consistently in a 4-year pattern since prior to the recession. And I think that's something this board, our Board of County Supervisors, Dr. Waltz, should be very proud of, in the work that the HR has done in our Budget and Finance Department. I cannot thank them enough. It is one of the most important things we can do for our staff, and I think that has been one of my highest priorities, and I'm very proud of that. And I want to thank Chair Wheeler, the Board of County Supervisors, for really coming up and fully funding our highest priorities. Next, I think it's important to, Dr. Waltz mentioned this, we were designated as one of 5 green designated schools from the U.S. Federal Department of Education. This is a huge deal. This was some work we did last summer. Our facilities folks, our superintendent, everyone put together some amazing work. Our school board put together a really broad, aggressive, initiative to start moving to carbon neutrality. This is really cutting edge work, and I think we were recognized for that. And I think we should all, take a moment to be grateful for that. So I'm very excited about that. One of our governor's schools, which we do participate in, is Thomas Jefferson School for Science and Technology, which is in Fairfax, but we share it with a number of other jurisdictions, was ranked again as the #1 high school in the United States of America. I think that's great for our school division. Our own governor's school has done extremely well. We just had a meeting last week. Our students have been selected to some of the most prestigious colleges and universities in the United States of America, and as well as our students across the school division. I'll have more to say on that here in a few minutes. But we have some really great opportunities for our families to take advantage of. Teacher Appreciation Week. What a great time to thank your teachers. My wife and I have, set up our, we try to work with all of our schools, and our kids are in 4 different schools in the county, and we work on all the Teacher Appreciation Weeks, and I can't thank you all enough for everything you do. It's been an incredible year. We've asked you to do more than you can ever imagine. Many of you aren't happy with me particularly, and I understand that. But you have stepped up to do amazing things for our children and our students, and we can't thank you enough. To our counselors, we have incredible counselors. In this year of the pandemic, my son is graduating, Dr. Waltz's daughter is graduating, Jen Wall's daughter is graduating. We have not only been sort of witness to the devastation that the pandemic has done to our students, but to our own children, but to our transition students, our students who are going to be graduating, going to college, joining the military, going into unemployment. I have watched on social media the high schools announcing the decision day for their students, the military signings that our students are doing, our athletes getting selected to colleges, our students going for employment. My goodness. Thank you to our counselors who are doing an incredible work this year. The numbers of students getting into some of the most competitive places and getting into their dream colleges, wherever it may be, and how excited they are. When you look at these, get on social media, see what our high schools are putting out. You should be very proud of the work our counselors, our teachers in our high schools have done. And to Dr. Waltz's credit, this is the probably third year since full-day kindergarten was implemented on that year. This would be the third class graduating with full-day kindergarten. And it continues to get better and better. And that's a true testament to the work you have done and your staff has done over the course of these many years. And I think it's so important to say that. We've had some great things happening across the school division, great things. We've done well in the science fair. I can't remember. I think Dr. Waltz and I talked about that. Our science fair students competed at the Virginia State Fair and won a record number of places across the division. I think historically, I want to congratulate Julia Renberg, the whole science team, that department, for the work they've done over the years and just building up that program. Congratulations to our high school teams who are doing things like Colgan debate team who's done well at states, all of our state champions, all of our folks doing well, all of our students participating and doing the best they can in the midst of this crazy pandemic. Our robotics teams participated in virtual state events. I think one of our teams placed second at the state fair, state robotics. So amazing things happening across this division, even though there's a pandemic. Amazing accolades that continue to happen, amazing work by our teachers. We are in the best school system in the United States of America. I do believe that, and I think it's really important that we just recognize that and thank all of our teachers on this week. It is because of all of you and all of our great counselors and our staff and administrators that our students are getting to where they're going. We have work to do. We've had a year where there's been quite a bit of loss for all of us. There's students who are not where we want them to be or need them to be. So the work that we're going to start now this summer and the work we're continuing to do now, I think will get us there. So I'm sorry I've gone on too long, but this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we can do it without all of you. So have a wonderful evening. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.